Hello guys, and welcome back to lesson 2 of our story writing project, where we've been looking at the model story Killer Corn. I would like you now in your books to write the LO I can use fronted adverbials. So press pause while you do that. Okay, so welcome back. Before we begin the focus today looking at fronted adverbials, I'd like you to listen to the story again. It's going to play in a moment, because next week we will be writing our own version of this story about some people being chased by some kind of monster. So we're going to listen to the story again, and you can be thinking, how are you going to change this? Or have you got any ideas right now? So I'll come back after the next part of the video when you're going to hear the story. Killer Corn. Come on, Fred, called Megan, excitement sparking in her sapphire eyes. As the siblings trudged through the gloomy forest, Fred's heart sank. His younger sister had begged him to bring her to the woodland after reading a legend about a unicorn spotted there. Finally, several irritating days of whining and pleading later, he yielded. Now, as night threw its shadowy cloak upon the world, Fred questioned the wisdom of his decision. "Hurry up, Fred," she called. "I'm coming," he shouted back in a frustrated voice. Soon after, they stepped into a glade. From above, the moon bathed everything in a ghostly silver light. Small creatures rustled in the undergrowth, and nearby a solitary owl hooted eerily. Like furry spitfires, bats swooped and swerved as they hunted nocturnal insects, squeaking in delight. The unpleasant odour of decaying leaves hung on the air. "The book said the unicorn appeared right about here," announced Megan in a hushed tone. "Yeah, and Snow White was riding on its back," Fred sighed, rolling his eyes. "What did you say?" asked Megan, as she examined the grass for hoof prints. "Nothing," grumbled Fred. Suddenly, some nearby shrubs began to shake. Then the unmistakable sound of a horse's neighing echoed amid the night. In response, Megan's features became more animated as she scanned the darkness in anticipation. "A unicorn! The legend is true," she shouted, eyes brimming with hope. Just then, a creature emerged from the greenery and stopped behind the excited girl. Fred's eyes widened in horror. His sister was correct. It was a unicorn, yet this terrifying beast was unlike anything he'd ever seen. With a coat the colour of midnight, it was a powerful stallion. Its malevolent red eyes burned like the fires of hell. However, it was the twisted horn which sent a shiver down the boy's spine. It was razor sharp and dripping with fresh blood. Noticing the colour drain from her brother's face, Megan was baffled. Slowly, she turned around and saw the unicorn. A cold knot formed in the pit of her stomach as she let out an ear-piercing scream. "Run, Megan, this way, quick," Fred bellowed. Without hesitating, Fred grabbed Megan's arm and dragged her away. Hearts pounding, they shot off into the trees. Behind them, the horrific animal let out a blood-curdling neigh and lowered its horn. Then it bolted after them. Running like the wind, the petrified pair fled through the forest. Meanwhile, the thundering of hooves grew steadily closer. With a sinking feeling, Fred realized it would catch them, and soon. Just then, they arrived at a fast-flowing river. Mustering every ounce of strength, Fred picked up his sister and launched her across the water to the other side. Although she was wet and muddy, she hauled herself up the river bank to safety. "Leave me! Go!" he screamed at the top of his lungs. Suddenly, the monster appeared. Snorting loudly, its blazing eyes fixed on Fred, he gulped hard. "Come on, then! What are you waiting for? Come and get me!" he yelled, waving his arms in the air. Lowering its dagger-like horn, the unicorn gave a mighty neigh and charged. However, just before he was skewered like kebab meat, Fred grabbed an overhanging branch and heaved himself upwards. Unable to stop in time, the brute crashed into the river, screeching in anguish. It was washed away by the powerful current. "I think you should ditch unicorns, Meg. How about mermaids instead?" asked Fred, utterly exhausted. Eyes wide, Megan regarded her brother in awe. Okay, so the focus of today's lesson is I can use fronted adverbials. Let's take a look at some of these from the story. So, the first, I have taken a sentence here from the story. The green part is a fronted adverbial and the blue part is the main clause. Now remember, a main clause makes sense on its own. So it says, finally, several irritating days of whining and pleading later, he yielded. Yielded means he gave in. His sister is nagging him to take her to where she thinks the unicorn is. Several days of irritating days of whining and pleading, and he gives in. So the fronted adverbial is that long green bit. Next, we've got a fronted adverbial of place. This is from the description section. From above, the moon bathed everything in a ghostly silver light. I really like that sentence, and I like how we've got two adjectives with a comma as well. So from above, that's a great fronted adverbial if you're describing a setting. Next one. With a coat the colour of midnight, it was a powerful stallion. Now, a stallion is a male horse. So you could have just said it was a powerful stallion. However, the sentence starts with a coat the colour of midnight. So that means it's a black horse. Next one, Megan was baffled. Baffled means confused. So let's look at the fronted adverbial. Noticing the colour drain from her brother's face, Megan was baffled. So we've got this fronted adverbial here. Have you noticed as well, all of them have a comma before the main clause. Running like the wind is the fronted adverbial. That means they were running very fast. The petrified pair fled through the forest. So a pair, two people. Petrified means terrified. Fled is to run. So running like the wind, the petrified pair fled through the forest. And again, we've got a comma after the fronted adverbial. Very simple one here, meanwhile. So at the same time, meanwhile, the thundering of hooves grew steadily closer. Next one, unable to stop in time. The brute crashed into the river. So the main clause is the brute. A brute is like a kind of a violent or an evil, a bad character. The brute crashed into the river, so unable to stop in time. And then screeching in anguish. So screeching is like screaming, and anguish is anger. It was washed away by the powerful current. So you've seen there some examples of fronted adverbials from the story. Now obviously, when you write your own version, I'm going to expect fronted adverbials from you too. So let's look at today's task. We've got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fronted adverbials. You are going to write them down and then you're going to add a main clause to make it make sense. Let me talk you through each one. With a sad look on her face, so this is a female because it says her. So you either need to start it, the main clause with she or a girl's name. So you're going to write the main clause that would make sense on its own. What did she do while she had a sad look on her face? So if I was to change this to a happy look, with a happy look on her face, she opened her Christmas presents. So what are you going to write after with a sad look on her face? Slyly. Now it doesn't mention he or she. It could even be an it if it's a creature. Slyly is something that's someone who's sneaky and not nice. What did they do? You need to write as main clause to say what somebody did slyly. Next, singing at the top of her lungs. Again, it's a her. If you want to change it to his, you can, but it has to match. So if you've said her lungs, so when you sing at the top of your lungs, it means you sing very loudly. What did she do while she sung? Singing at the top of her lungs, she, and then you say what she did. Or his lungs and what he did. During the long winter, that could be anybody. That could be about a squirrel, could be about a dog, could be a boy or a girl. What did they do during the long winter? And the last one, in disbelief. If you are in disbelief, you can't believe what is happening. So you could say something like, in disbelief, he couldn't believe his eyes. Or in disbelief, he approached the stranger. Maybe he saw someone and he can't believe who they are. So you are now going to, underneath your LO, write each of these 5 fronted adverbials, and you're going to add your own main clause, and I'll look forward to seeing what you've done. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.